Hello and welcome to another episode of FAFSA Ready, Set, Go Live. I'm Ken Berry, temporarily filling in for our normal host who will be joining us in just a little bit, none other than our founder, president, and CEO of Coast Inc., Katisha Tony. I'm also joined by one of the members of our FAFSA support team, and that would be Melissa. How you doing, Melissa? Yeah, we are excited to be here today. And this week, we are happy to once again be joined by Tanika House, Associate Director of Financial Aid at Purdue University Northwest. How you doing, Tanika?
Wonderful, wonderful on this hot day.
I know, right? You staying cool?
Absolutely. There's no
Yeah,
better way. Otherwise, it's going to be winter next week.
exactly. But you got to sit somewhere where that AC is blowing directly on you, right?
I love it. I love it.
Listen, we are, of course, waiting on our CEO to join us. But in the meantime, I thought we could just talk about some of the FAQs, some of the frequently asked questions that you've been getting since the last time we talked, and maybe even tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you find the students are facing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, dealing with the FAFSA application this year for the 24-25 has been a little bit bittersweet because we have some students that have successfully submitted a FAFSA application, and then there's some that have not been so successful, meaning that some students submitted the application with no challenges, and then we still have some applications that are still pending. So and to this date, we've even had some students that actually submitted a paper application. So those that aren't familiar with a paper application that we had done maybe some years ago before they actually became on the web. A lot of times, me being old, of course, I had to submit the paper application. And many of us are familiar with the paper application and the tedious paperwork behind that and the processing. So fast forward to the 24-25, we've had students that had to submit a paper application that have not yet been successful in getting an answer back regarding the status of their FAFSA application. So we've been having students to just be patient if they have not already been enough since January. Just continue to be patient as the federal processors are in the process of processing those paper applications, or if there's any pending applications that are out there. So, but there's been a great deal of challenges out there. Students submitting a FAFSA application and it's still in progress, has not been yet processed. And that's been, weeks in advance and waiting for students to get an answer. A lot of students are being discouraged and say, you know what, maybe I'll wait until the second semester to start, things like that because of the frustration. And this goes across the board, not just, here at Purdue Northwest. This goes across the board with many different schools, universities, institutions that are assisting students doing completing their FAFSA application that have been having challenges, submitting the application.
So if I'm one of those students and I'm kind of facing some of those challenges, or I'm getting discouraged, or any number of things that I could be feeling right now, how are you encouraging those students?
Oh, it's a lot of encouragement. I can tell you that much on my end. I just tell them, you know what, and on from my side of the house, students are able to get registered for their classes. I'm able to what we call is hold their classes, allow them to continue going to classes until that FAFSA application is processed. It's like, don't worry about that just yet. Let's worry about your academics first. That's first and foremost. Let's worry about your, and I know, the parents are like, well, how much do I owe? Things like that. Well, don't worry about that just yet because it's not your challenge. It's not your issue that we have not yet received the FAFSA application. So let's go to school. Let's complete and pass those classes, and we'll worry about and we'll just keep checking the status of your applications on a day-to-day basis. That's all that we can do at this point. Even us talking to the federal processor on the other end, they encourage the students as well to just keep checking your status on a day-to-day basis because things change. So that's the only answer that I can give to those students, and a bit of hope and a bit of a sigh of relief, and not, hey, you know what, let me come back next semester or let me take a gap year. No, you don't want to take a gap year. Just go. Just come on, go to class. We'll welcome you in many schools, welcome the students, enroll in their classes, go to class, or even if they're living in housing, remain in housing until we actually receive your FAFSA application.
And so you said something in regard to talking to the federal processor. So
Yeah.
on your end of things, you are advocating on behalf of the students. You are kind of, I don't know if you can push the
Yes.
process per se, but
Yes.
you are trying to monitor the process, make sure that your students are on the radar. Talk a little bit more about that, because a lot of times students don't know and parents don't know about the work that you're doing behind the scenes to help.
Well, normally what happens is I go out to many different schools. So whether they're going to come to our institution or not, I have an open door policy, and I invite whomever in my office if they need help completing their FAFSA application. So I think just me having that open door policy, being able to explain the process, um, with students completing their FAFSA application, and it just kind of putting them at an ease of, hey, you're not the only one that's experiencing these challenges. You're not the only one. It's millions of students that
Wow.
are experiencing these challenges. And on top of that, there were over 1 million errors that occurred in this FAFSA process. So it's just, talking that process through to them and say, hey, everything is going to be okay. We're waiting patiently, just like they're waiting patiently. So I just kind of put some of that at ease with the students and their families, and let them know that we're just going to work. We're going to check every week. If you got to come in here every week, we're going to keep checking that FAFSA application every week. And like I said, whether they come here or not, we have students from Illinois, and they come and visit. They needed help with their FAFSA application, they will call. Students even have my cell phone number. They say, why, Tanika, do they have you? Well, they do. And I don't mind, but it's just a sense of like, don't stress yourself out
Right.
over this process, because you're not the only one whose FAFSA has not yet been completed. Yeah.
So what are some of the questions that you've been getting a lot? So what are some of those frequently asked questions?
So the frequently asked questions, hey, what's the status of my financial aid? No. Hey, that's
Right. That's the biggest one.
That's the biggest one. Hey, what's the status? Or why do I have to? Come across some questions like, why do I have to submit my 2022 tax information? That normally doesn't come from the student. That comes from the parent. So even though this year, for the 24-25 academic year, their tax information will be automatically transferred directly into the FAFSA form. Even though that's the case, sometimes those tax records may be needed. It may be some additional questions that the federal processor may ask, but the applications that I have been assisting students with and their families with is that those tax records are automatically uploaded from the IRS. So they don't even see it. They don't have to input anything. And I think that's the better way of doing things.
Okay.
Only because that kind of reduces some of the errors that, sometimes, the student or the parent don't understand what the adjusted gross income is, or what are some of the taxable, taxes that I had to pay on that. So it just kind of eliminates some of that error. It reduces the needing to come back and updating your FAFSA application, or even eliminates sometimes when the student have to be selected for a process called verification. So sometimes, if the information doesn't match, your file can be selected for a process called verification, in which the school will say, well, you need to provide us with a copy of your taxes, or, or a copy of your social security number, or a copy of something, because something doesn't look right or it's not matching on their end. So I think that's why they ask, those questions like, why is my tax information needed?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things. Yeah.
I remember even when I was in school, I had to do the verification process more times than I think the average person had to do it. But talk just a little bit more about that process and what it's all about, and why you shouldn't be afraid of when the financial aid office say, hey, we need some additional documentation so we can verify.
Right. So, and I know the students and their families, they get a little leery. Well, not really much the student, but the parents, they get a little bit more leery about doing it. So you need to complete the FAFSA application form to be considered for federal grants. If what is called student employment, which is called federal work study, student loans, that's part of financial aid, and then now sometimes with scholarships, you have to have a FAFSA application on file. On top of the new requirement, it's a graduation requirement now. So it's not that, hey, we're going to subpoena you and say, hey, you need to submit this FAFSA application.
Yeah.
This is for your student. These are some of the resources that can be used to help pay for some of those college expenses. Cost of attendance, your tuition and fees, your housing and food, your books and supplies, your transportation, things like that. That's, it's costly. It's costly. And sometimes the student doesn't realize that sometimes that parent may have to provide their information just so that you can receive some of these resources to help with some of those expenses. For example, like my son, he wanted to go to Miami State. And I said, I bet you do. I bet you wanted to go to Miami State, not at $50,000, for the academic year. That's a lot of money to come out of pocket.
Yeah.
And sometimes the students have to realize, they have to understand. I always say that adding and subtracting. You have to realize what resources are available for you that can assist you with your college costs. So completing this FAFSA application is one of those resources that are extremely beneficial for the students and their families to help them fund some of those college expenses.
Okay, we do have a couple questions that we have online, so I'm gonna pull them up here real quick. Is
Sure.
parents' income a requirement? Melly wants to know, is parents' income a requirement?
Parents' income is a requirement for the FAFSA. The income is what determines your financial aid eligibility. The household income. So it's the parents' income, or even if the student worked, it's the household income that is reported on the FAFSA that determines what you are eligible to receive. So yes,
Awesome.
Federal government rules and regulations.
All right, we got a second one here. Are there any common issues that students have expressed were issues when they were completing their FAFSA? What are those common issues students have been expressing?
The common issues, I think, um, and this just goes across the board, and just not for the 24-25. Actually, it's creating that federal student aid ID. So
Okay.
that federal student ID has been a headache, some years back and now going forward, because not only the student have to create this federal student aid ID, or what we call as a FSA ID, that's used as your electronic signature. So you have to create this username and password, but there's a multitude of steps in you creating this username and password. You even have, starting off with your social security number, that's one. You can get the last two digits wrong, and now it becomes a total mess for the federal processor, because they want to make sure that there's no one out there using your information. So now you have to go through a lot of red tape to try to correct that. You have to contact them and things like that. So you have the student creating the federal student aid ID, and then also you have the contributor, which would be the parent, the step parent, adoptive parent, And now even so going forward, you have parents with no socials that have to create this FSA ID. So when completing the FSA ID, which is used as your electronic signature to start the FAFSA application, um, the student have their FSA ID, they start the FAFSA application, and then they send a consent for the parents to complete their part. That's where the headache also comes in play, because not a lot of times the parents receive the invite
Okay.
to complete their FAFSA application. So those are some of the challenges. The biggest challenges would be that FSA ID creating there. So if there are seniors out there, get those completed now. Start, applying for your FSA ID now, along with your contributor, your parent, or parents. Okay. So that's really some of the challenges that we have. And then knowing your social security number, not using use your personal email, not your high school email
Mm.
address, because that expires. So you have to use your personal email address. And mom and student can't use the same email. So when you're creating these FSA IDs, your federal student aid ID, make sure that information is totally separate from one another, because again, that's used as your electronic signature.
Awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, on episode 2 of Ready Set Go, we walked folks
Yes,
through how to set up that FSA ID. And so if you're
yes,
out there watching, or you're watching this later in your spare time, go back and check out episode 2 of Ready Set Go, and that information should be there. So we got another question here from
sure.
our Facebook audience. What determines who contributes to the household income? What determines who contributes to the household income?
What determines that is, so we have, okay, so there's contributors. Can you see me? I just want to make
Yes, we
sure.
can see you.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we have determining, what they call is determining a parent as a contributor. So whose information is needed. So as the parent, who is considered, what they call is who is considered the parent. So the parent would be, um, like I said, the biological, adoptive, step parent, the person that provides more than 50% support on the for your living expenses. That's considered your parent. That's the person who provides that information on the FAFSA application.
Awesome. Um, so Melissa, you are currently a student, and you're talking to students every day. And is there anything that your peers have been wondering, curious about? And then also, recently we did a event in partnership with Trio, where we did a Tower of Power, which was really just about we wanted to make sure that students were getting there, and their parents were signing up for that FSA ID. And you had, Melissa, an opportunity to kind of connect with some parents who were Spanish speaking, and I think we have run into some challenges. You want to talk a little bit about that and see how Tanika might be able to address some of those issues?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the common issues was, or the questions was, what to do if they don't have a social security number. And
So
so, could you kind of walk through what the following steps would be for that?
Oh, absolutely. So, and we've had, and this is all new. Well, I want to say all new, because we've had previous FAFSA applications. If they didn't have a social security number, they were able to add all zeros in the social security slot. Um,
Mm.
but for the 24-25 academic year, because the no social parents have to create this FSA ID, it actually has a question link on there, like, do you have a social? If they indicate no, then it's almost like a skip logic, and allows them to create their FSA ID information, to provide that FSA ID, or to provide their information on the FAFSA application. Some of the challenges were, however, once they created their FSA ID, um, on studentaid.gov with the no social, they were also directed to that they had to provide additional information. They would receive an email from the federal processor for them to verify some information that they are whom they say that they are.
Mhm.
It had to be like maybe utility bill, a cell phone bill, something like that with their address and things like that. They had to verify. They still do have to verify whom they say that they are. And then once that information has been verified, they will then have access. I think it usually takes about what they say, 3 to 4 business days, but it had taken longer than that, almost 2 to 3 weeks sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, and then after that, after the information has been verified, then they are now linked to complete their FAFSA application for the student. So remember, there's two separate applications. So one for the student to complete.
mhm.
The student then sends the invite for consent for the parent. And then once the parent completes their part, now the application has been submitted. But that has been some of the challenges with the no socials. And I think across the board, everybody's just had
Mhm.
challenges submitting the application. But I think because this was a new process for the no socials to create an FSA ID for the signature, I think that was one of the challenges, more lengthy challenge where they
Yeah.
had to provide additional documentation.
Do they need to provide their ITN number instead?
No, no.
Okay.
We were told, no, do not provide that ITN number.
Okay.
Not at all. Yeah, just indicate no social, and then just follow the steps from there.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about, because a lot of times students who are either going to college for the first time or are thinking about going back to school, oftentimes you kind of make a last minute decision. That's not bad,
Yeah,
right? Because it's going to college, like it takes a lot of rearranging of your life, especially if you're a non-traditional student.
yeah,
But they're just like life factors, right, that contribute to whether or not hey, I should go ahead and enroll. But what if I'm that student that I've kind of made that last minute decision to go to school, so I haven't done any of this, right? Is right, because I literally just said, hey, I
them
want
all
to
the
get in.
time.
Yeah, get in, try to get in under the gun before the fourth quarter buzzer goes off. What is it too late for me to fill out the FAFSA? What are my options
Yeah.
in that case?
That's a great question, because, and it's funny that you say that, because we still have students now trying to get enrolled for classes now. Submitting the FAFSA application, no, it's not too late. You have until June 30th of next year to actually submit the 24-25 FAFSA
Hmm.
application. But I tell students, especially if you're doing if you're looking to attend a school within your state that of your residence, submit the application on time. So by that
Hmm.
way, you're not missing out on the state aid.
Hmm.
So like for Indiana, it's April 15th deadline date. I think for Illinois, it's first come, first serve. No, for Illinois, it's first come, first serve. But you want to make sure that you understand that submitting that application on time really affects the amount of funds that you may be eligible to receive. You want to receive the maximum awards that you can receive by submitting that application on time. But for the slackers, I don't want to call them that for the most part, but we do have some. I'm like, why did you wait so late?
Right.
So just submit the application as soon as you can. But as far as starting school, that's another topic on in reference to
Right.
when you can start or not. But not the deadline date is June 30th of 2025 to submit the 24-25 application.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions online or via the stream. Any last little nuggets you want to give out? Any last little tips or something that we all need to know?
Yeah, so, like I tell the students, when you're submitting the FAFSA application, or when the parents are submitting the application, if you need assistance in completing that application, get some financial aid experts to assist you with doing that. Because a lot of times when you're in this FAFSA application portal, and you're completing these questions, sometimes we found that students would just mark anything on there. And one in particular was there was a question for ask students if their parents are unwilling to provide their information. How many students put yes to that question? It's tons. It's tons of students. So if they answered yes, that their parents are unwilling to provide the information, then the students are only eligible for an unsubsidized loan. That's it. So which means now they lost out on their, if they're a 21st Century Scholar, if they're Frank O'Bannon, if they receive a MAP grant, their state awards, their federal Pell grants, things like that. Now you're only eligible for loans by just answering that question yes, because you didn't read it clearly, or because your parents just said, no, I don't need to provide it, so I won't provide it. And so I'm just going to answer yes if you're asking me that question. So just understand and read those questions. Get, before you submit the FAFSA application, have somebody to review it, save it, have someone to review it first to make sure that those questions are correct so that you can utilize all of the resources that are available for you and submit it on time.
And just in case we didn't address it, what happens if a student's parents' marital status change?
Oh yeah, that's really a good question too. If their marital status change, so when you're completing a FAFSA application, as of today, the date that you fill out the application, if the parents are married now, but wasn't, let's just say but wasn't in 2022. So if parents are married now, but wasn't married in 2022, the time that you submitted the FAFSA application, that marital partner information is needed on that FAFSA application. Okay. So let's just say if, you have those 2022, and we're talking specifically for the 24-25. So if that 2022 taxes, I was married, but no longer is married, then we, meaning your special circumstance administrators, can go back in and subtract out your, now if you're now divorced, partner's information. We can subtract it out. So, and when all else fails, I always tell students and their families, always meet with a financial aid specialist. There's always things that we can go back in and we can recalculate and ask for additional documentations as long as you provide that information to us. Don't just assume that, hey, I just submitted it and that's that. We can always go back in and recalculate that information for the students and their families.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much, Tanika, for joining us with your expertise. Thank you to I would love to say I was the expert.
I know, right?
But thank you for your expertise, and thank you to our viewers for watching our live. Next week, we'll talk through what happens after you submit your FAFSA. So stay tuned. We'll see you then. Remember, we will do a live session every Tuesday during the month of August and September. At September at 12:30, because August is just about out of here. We also have one-on-one sessions that are available to anyone needing that direct FAFSA support that Tanika talked about. We also have bilingual support on some of those days as well, and that's done by none other than our Melissa, who you see right there on the screen waving at you. Yeah. All you have to do is go to our website, www.coastinc.org, and find our FAFSA page and schedule a one-on-one time with us. The page is also full of FAFSA resources and details that we are updating all the time. Share our page, share our resources, and follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you, and we'll see you next time for FAFSA Ready, Set, Go, where we spend every Tuesday talking to experts on all things FAFSA and financial aid. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.